Hey y'all. Today, I wanted to explore an article that I read in Feminegra, written by Miss Historyn, that discusses the parallels between Princess Diana, Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Now, we've talked about the parallels between Princess Diana and Meghan Sussex, and I have several videos discussing the parallels between Princess Diana's life and experience and her son, Prince Harry's, and not only their mission-driven work, but also just their demeanor, the similarities they have between them as people, and how I just genuinely feel like he is the carrier of her light on this earth is the best way I can describe it. And so it's not a surprise that he ended up marrying Meghan, someone who is very similar to her, especially in spirit and motivation and mission. But someone I have never explored on this channel, who I have always actually pretty much admired, was Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy. Y'all know, like every other red-blooded American who loves history and documentaries, I have explored all things Kennedy since the time I was a child. Like, I love history, and I especially love dramatic history. I went through this phase where I was calling my grandmother every morning and discussing all the drama I had learned about every one of the American presidents, and I started at number one. I would call her with like the little stories and the drama and like the non-important things, but like the scandals. And like, oh my gosh, we stayed talking about Oni Judge for about 4 days. Like I've always loved history, and that's just part of my personality. So obviously, like most people in America, I fell down the Kennedy rabbit hole real early, and I've maintained my place ever since. So Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy is someone I have admired, but also I've just always had a little space in my heart for just, God, she just had so much potential, and she was set to live a very big life with or without her husband. And he was set to live a very big life, and I just hate that them and, her siblings, or her sister and her husband were also killed in that plane crash. And so I feel really bad for her, but I've never really covered her on the channel. So when I saw this article from Miss Historyn discussing the parallels between these three women, it just seemed so obvious. And I was like, why haven't I thought of this? I can think of 3 things that connects these women right off the top of my head. I'm so curious what Miss Historyn's going to say. Now, I've never met Miss Historyn. I would love to meet her or talk to her, interact with her in some way. She just seems like a very no nonsense person. She just seems like the type of person I love. And I've never met her, but I enjoy her work. And I've said several times, her words are often ripped right out of my own brain, but probably spoken far more eloquently. She actually, it's almost like she pulls them out of my brain and she's like, I'm just going to clean this up for you, girl. Because usually when I'm struggling to put my thoughts on a subject into words and I read an article of hers, I'm like, exactly that, which is why I like to discuss them here and share them with you all so that she can get far more traction. So anyway, when I saw that she was tackling this, I just became so curious. I read the article, absolutely loved it, and I had a lot of thoughts. So I'm excited to bring that to you today. So let's get started. Thank you so much for clicking on my video, and if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to explore an article written by Miss Historyn for Feminegra that discusses the similarities between Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, Princess Diana, and Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy. Before we get into that, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And once the video is over, if you would like to read this article, which I highly encourage you to do, give it some traction, give it some clicks, share it to your social medias. I really think Miss Historyn deserves a huge audience, and it's only a matter of time, but let's go ahead and be at the forefront and help her get there. Feel free to select the link to this article in the description box below underneath sources and read it for yourself and share it if you would like. Once again, this article is in Feminegra, and it's titled, Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy is being compared to Diana and Meghan for a reason. This is written by Miss Historyn. There is a very specific kind of hell reserved for women who marry into families that the public has decided it owns. The Kennedys, the Windsors, 2 dynasties built on myth, tragedy, and a bottomless appetite for consuming the women who marry in. This month, Town and Country drew lines between Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy and Meghan Sussex, while People explored the parallels between Carolyn and Princess Diana. The fashion parallels are obvious. Meghan has openly admired Carolyn's wedding dress, and both women understood the power of minimalist elegance. But the real story is not about clothes. It is about what happens when an independent American woman steps into a golden cage that comes with its own pre-written script. From Town and Country, June 2nd, 2026, quote, I love how people say Meghan knew what she was getting into. People said the same thing about Carolyn Bessette when she married into the Kennedy family. You could never know. Meghan said it right. The perception is nothing like the reality. Carol Radswell. John's friend and former executive assistant, Rosemarie Terenzio, agreed. Quote, as humans, we sit there and say, we think we know what to expect, but when we get there are surprises. It was something that she was not prepared for, not because she didn't know who John was. It doesn't matter what's in your head. When you're experiencing it, your emotions and your entire being has the experience. Quote, immediately I picked up on the fact that the way that Meghan was being judged and had to be, and was under that immediate pressure, that the most important thing was to satisfy this image for this family, which is representing something larger. Sasha Shermayev, close friend of John F. Kennedy Jr., said. From People, June 9th, 2026, quote, it was difficult to join these families. There were rules and expectations coming from within the family and from the outside world, author Carolyn Halleman. Diana eventually learned to harness media attention for her causes. Carolyn struggled to find that balance. She was completely overwhelmed and never found a way to deal with it, Halleman says. When Princess Diana died in 1997, Carolyn was terrified. She was worried that it was going to happen to her, says Halleman. Less than 2 years later, Carolyn and John were gone. The comparison between Meghan Sussex and Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy is interesting because it goes beyond fashion, even though the minimalist style link is obvious. Meghan admired Carolyn's wedding dress, and both women understood the power of clean, simple, elegant dressing. But the deeper connection is not really about clothes. It's about what happens when an independent American woman marries into a powerful dynasty and that the public thinks it owns. Carolyn married into the Kennedy family, and Meghan married into the British royal family. Both women entered families already loaded with myth, tragedy, public expectation, and emotional projection. People did not just see them as wives, they saw them as characters in a national story. That is where the pressure becomes impossible because no woman can compete with the fantasy people already built in their heads. That is why I reject the idea that Meghan knew what she was getting into. People said the same thing about Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, but you truly cannot understand that level of scrutiny until you are living inside of it. Knowing someone is famous is one thing. Understanding the power of the family is another. And the press's interest? You can read about it, but you cannot truly know it until the cameras are in your face. But knowing that in theory is not the same as experiencing photographers, headlines, public judgment, family politics, and emotional pressure every day. I want to pause there. The cameras and photography alone would do me in. I don't know if I could handle that many flashes all the time or strangers looking at you all the time. Because think about the vulnerability that provides. They know you, you don't know them. So they kind of understand you in some way. They might understand who you are, kind of how you behave. They may have studied your mannerisms. They know your voice. They know your name. They know things about you, even things they probably shouldn't know, thanks to reporters and journalists who pry. They're at a huge advantage. Meanwhile, you have no idea who's on the other side of that face, that mask, that camera lens. You don't know. Even worse, you don't know their intentions. Letting people get close to you when you are a public figure is a very vulnerable place to be in, and it is extremely dangerous. Ask John Lennon. There are so many people who have connected with strangers under the guise that they either an admirer or they just recognize you and you're being generous or polite or you're genuinely curious about them too, and you're allowing them to make the connection, and they cause harm. History is riddled with that happening to not only celebrities, but public figures as well. Sometimes people stalk regular people. Stalking is a very dangerous thing, and it is very, very much underspoken about. It's not spoken about enough. Voyeurism is also not spoken about enough. And the internet has only made voyeurism even more dangerous, but also easy to obtain, excuse me. More people are, I won't even, exaggerate, but more people are participating in voyeurism and surveillance than they even realize because of our cultural norms shifting to meet the demands and the customs of social media. People were recording, and this is a video I just saw 3 or 4 days ago, Jaden and Willow Smith out to lunch. A brother and a sister just out to lunch eating. And you could see from the angle of the camera that someone was holding their phone underneath the table, so likely between their legs or around their knee under the table. And Willow was talking, and you can see it caught her eye. And she just looks at Jaden, and without saying a word, they just get their stuff and walk away. Now, thankfully, they seem to have handled it well, but y'all know my motto. You shouldn't have had to. Just because you're dignified and you understand the parameters and you understand what's going on and you just adjust to it doesn't mean you should have to. It's extremely unfair. And more than likely, had someone just waited until they paused in their conversation and said, would you mind if I took a picture of you or with you, and just came over to say hello, they would have been more than happy to do that. There's something so insidious about the creepy nature of hiding to take a picture or waiting until someone is not in a public facing space to take advantage of them. And when I say public speaking, I'm not saying in public, but someone is not performing or doing whatever it is that you know them for, whether that's singing, acting, performing, what have you. If someone is literally in their downtime, I would always say, just leave them alone. You'll get the moment at some other time, or they'll probably appreciate it. But when someone is in casual clothes, chilling with their family, they likely don't want to take a photo with you. They probably will, because they understand the pressures of the media and they understand the pressures of the public. But is it fair to keep asking them that? No. Is it even worse to just take advantage and do it anyway? It's way worse. And so I say that to say, we've seen so many instances of this, and so many little actresses, not little, but young actresses whose life barely started. They took a role, like the young lady from Poltergeist. And there's so many different, the young woman from, was it The Voice, in Miami? There's so many different little young star. I keep saying little. I'm not meaning to minimize them as people. I'm saying it because of their age, but young starlets whose life is just beginning, and it's cut short because some crazed lunatic became obsessed with them, projected onto them and projected feelings onto them, stalked them, and people didn't take them seriously until they were no longer here to plead their case. And I say that to say that it's relevant to this because the media perpetuates that. The media drives that kind of insanity. And then social media, on top of all of that, has made it almost impossible to not be caught on camera against your will. That's actually something that has plagued me when going out and like partying with friends and going to dinner with friends and things like that. I'm not a celebrity, thankfully, but more often than not, when you're going out with people, it's just the custom to just pull their phone out, start recording, start taking photos. Like you could be hopefully you're not blowing your nose outside of a bathroom, but you could be like scratching your face or, trying to read a text message, or you could have just gotten bad news, or you could just be taking a bite of food. And all of a sudden there's a photo of you doing that on the internet, or a video of you in the background scarfing down some wings or something. Listen, you want to see the worst in me? Put a wing in front of me. But that happened to me at a bridal shower once. I went to a friend's bridal shower and I didn't even know this picture existed. Apparently I was taking photos, and this was at the peak of my weight as well. So I've always loved food, but for some reason people love to give, this is just my experience. I have since lost a ton of weight, and people's candid photos of me when I was thin, and even now that I'm way thinner, are very different than the photos they took of me when I was at my peak weight. I swear, it just felt to me, and this could be an insecurity thing, but it felt to me that people would wait until I was taking a bite of food or holding food to be like, smile. No one has taken a photo of me eating since I have lost weight over a year and a half ago. I don't have one photo of me eating, and I've been all over the place. None of the people that I know have accidentally caught a photo of me taking a bite, chewing something good. And when you squint your eyes and you make that face like, no one has gotten a photo of me doing that either. And there's so many photos of me in the background, videos of me in the background. But at my peak weight, there was not one photo that a friend took of me where I wasn't in proximity to food. And I say friend, I'm putting quotes because I'm no longer around those people. But there's no candid photos of me in the background, not holding, like every photo you saw of me that was candid was in proximity to food. And I felt like it was subtle, but it was meant to make me look a certain way. And then on top of that, on my birthday, this woman named Brenda, whose bridal shower I attended, she then posted a very unflattering photo of me while eating for my birthday. And she was in my wedding, so she could have used like wedding photos of me. We went to college together. We've known each other a whole 20. So there was hundreds, possibly even thousands of photos we have together and of me solo that she could have used. And she chose the photo of me taking a bite at my peak weight. And so I say that to say social media has made it so common for people to just say, I don't care what you got going on. I need this moment. I want this lighting. I want a photo, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And it's almost like the public has just been ushered into this era of you have lost autonomy, especially as it pertains to images and imagery of you. And while, yes, if you go out, more than likely, you're going to be caught on camera. But reverse 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, people would ask, even normal people. And I'm speaking on this because of how egregious it's gotten for normal people. So I'm making the point that if it's become that bad for normal people to just assume and just accept, people can do with my image what they will. We're not even getting into the AI conversation. Can you imagine what that's like for celebrities and public figures and how scary that feels? And although social media and AI wasn't a thing for the public anyway, in the 90s when Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy and Princess Diana were alive, they still had to deal with the people following them around. And it might have even been a little bit worse because we had so little interaction with celebrities and public figures back then that when we did see them, there were massive hordes of fans that would just accumulate. Like, I'm not even going to get into the Michael Jackson conversation because that's a whole nother existence. That's a whole nother type of fame that I don't feel like anyone else could reach. But as far as just everyday celebrities and public figures, their fans and supporters are just people who recognize them, didn't know when that would happen again. We didn't see our celebrities until they were on award shows or providing an interview or in their next project, which is probably why their projects did a lot better because we were eager to see them. Now we can just get on their Instagram and be like, what kind of workout J-Lo been doing? Or where Beyonce go last? Or like, we can just kind of tap in. Back then, we didn't know what the hell these people did. If J-Lo lived next to me, I wouldn't know because we just weren't in their business like that. So when people saw them out and about in public, people clamored to them. People had cameras. And back then, I don't know if y'all remember, but I used to keep my digital camera on me. And before my mom got me a digital camera for my birthday, I always had a disposable camera. Like, it was part of my groceries. Like, she would always just have me a disposable camera ready to roll. It helps my mom as a photographer. So I always had a camera on me, and a lot of people did that. So that was kind of the norm back then to have a digital camera. We didn't have phones, but we did have cameras. But even back then, there was still some kind of paparazzi existed. But in the 90s, prior to like the boom in the 2000s, in the 90s, there was still this kind of keep your distance. We got restaurant photos of celebrities. We got event photos of celebrities, but still you kind of keep a little bit of distance. Now people will like straight up walk up to you, put their arm around you and pull out their phone. And it's just like, whoa, you are a stranger. If a celebrity gut punched a photographer or a stranger, I almost always am on the celebrity side because you genuinely have no idea what you are doing and what position you're putting people in. Every time I've seen a celebrity attack a photographer, I've always just been like, well, listen, they don't hit everybody, so you must have been doing something. I chalk it up to the situation at hand. But anyway, I say that to say, I feel so bad for public figures and celebrities, especially very, very popular ones, because not only is their humanity stripped and any empathy that the general public would have for a normal person going through that kind of voyeurism, they typically don't provide that to celebrities and public figures because more than likely they're greatly admired, they're rich, they're very successful, and for some reason people equate all of those advantages to no longer being human and no longer deserving respect. And even when people ask for reasonable levels of respect that shouldn't even need to be asked for, such as, no, you should not be able to pull out a long, extra long, extended camera lens to photograph me inside my home rocking my baby to sleep. Or the wonderful example that Meghan provided, if I show you a photo of my child on my desk, would you then feel entitled to pull out my phone and say, let me look at every photo you've ever taken of your child? I loved that analogy because it was spot on. So anyway, there's an advantage provided to people, there's a disadvantage provided to celebrities and public figures, especially now that we have way more outlets willing to record and document celebrities, that I can understand why they feel extremely unsafe and why when people say like people like J-Lo are being extra by their levels of security. And I've heard so many times people are like, Beyonce, at some point you have to like not have security everywhere you go. And I'm like, says who? Until y'all no longer know her by first name alone, you should probably just accept that this is her life now. It's not her being a diva. It's her trying to stay alive. Because a lot of people can't say the same. A lot of people are no longer here to plead their own case because of how dangerous it is for the world to know who you are and for you to struggle to know everybody else. So anyway, I share that to say, I remember the feverish nature of the public around the Kennedys, Carolyn Bessette and John Kennedy, especially when they first got married, and sometimes when they would fight and argue in public, and their messy, like, makeup to break up. They were getting partners, the whole, like, they were drama. And so, of course, anything that's public, you've got public, beautiful people, rich people, also with some drama, and they're willing to do some of this stuff in front of you. That's tabloid gold. It's gross, but it's tabloid gold. People will buy it. And Meghan, the most popular woman in the world, married to the most eligible bachelor in the world. I mean, she's beautiful. He's beautiful. Like I said, beautiful people, rich. They didn't have any drama, but they were beautiful. And Meghan marked a change in the royal family. It just made people curious. It also helps that she was already a celebrity. So you see this celebrity people admire on this amazing show. You see this young royal man who people have been watching grow up since he was a child, and people adored his mother as well. You have these two people coming together. They were meant to be a powerhouse. That doesn't mean they're not deserving of respect and peace. And then you have Princess Diana, who unfortunately has become the poster child for what happens when the media goes unchecked and the paparazzi go too far. Again, it's so sad what happened to her for so many reasons, but it couldn't have happened to a worse person. Like, did I say that right? It couldn't have happened to a better I don't know how to say that. Anyway, she seems to just be, from what we know of her, just one of the kindest, most empathetic and empathic people. And she connected with people, and she really not only championed humanity on a large scale, but she represented it. She brought out humanity in people. She shined a light on the needs of the world, and she had no problem trudging into any area, no matter what, to shine a light and bring awareness to the world's most important issues and represent underrepresented communities. She was genuinely a light in this world, a walking angel, if you will. And for her to meet her end the way she did, something that was so frivolous and something that could have been prevented, something she brought awareness to, and outright said, if something is not done, I am going to be in harm's way. I am already in harm's way, only for her words to turn out to be pretty prophetic and easily preventable. It would have cost nothing to continue to secure her for the royal family. And being that she was and forever will be a royal, that should have just been a given. We won't go down that road, but y'all have heard me in my protest about security should not be a bargaining chip. An institution should not have the right to withhold security. It's essentially saying, if you don't do what we say, we can kill you. And then we watch them do it. It's a very sad thing. Anyway, let's get back to the article. The same applies to Harry and John F. Kennedy Jr. Both men grew up under public ownership after a childhood tragedy. America felt protective over John after the assassination of his father, just as Britain and the world felt emotionally attached to Prince Harry after watching him walk behind Princess Diana's coffin. That kind of public sympathy can turn possessive. People begin to think they are owed access to your life, your marriage, and your choices. That is where Carolyn and Meghan become especially similar. They were both judged as if they had married not just a man, but a public institution. Carolyn had to live with the weight of the Kennedy myth. Meghan had to live with the weight of monarchy, empire, race, and the Diana comparison. Both women were expected to satisfy an image created by other people. And when they did not fit that image neatly, the backlash followed. But there's also an important difference. Princess Diana, too, suffered inside the Windsor machine. She was isolated, briefed against, and eventually cast out of the official royal structure. Yet even she was never subjected to the relentless, racialized press coverage that Meghan faced. The Kennedy machine may have been controlling and suffocating, but I do think it operated against Carolyn in the same way the Windsor machine operated against Meghan. With Meghan, there was palace briefings, racialized press coverage, and a clear attempt to isolate her from Prince Harry. The message from some corners has always seemed obvious. Harry can come back, but Meghan should not. Which is so insane to me for so many reasons, but especially the fact that they are married and have kids. In what world is it ever acceptable to say a man should abandon his wife and children? Especially under the guise of good home family values. Like, it's just a contradiction within itself, but it's also a marker of it has nothing to do with family values. It has everything to do with racism. That is why the comparison works, but only up to a point. Carolyn helps us understand the danger of marrying into a dynasty that the public romanticizes. Meghan shows us what happens when that dynastic pressure, collides with race, misogynoir, tabloid abuse, and an institution desperate to protect itself. An institution that had already broken one woman, Princess Diana, and learned how to do it more efficiently the second time. Both women were treated as symbols before they were treated as people. That is the real parallel. Excellent article, Miss Historian. Thank you so much for watching the Sharion Sade YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching my content. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to comment along the way. If you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to the video. There are several parallels that can be drawn between these three ladies, Meghan Sussex, Princess Diana, and Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy. But with Meghan, there is always the X factor of race, and the weight of that can never be overstated. My heart consistently goes out to her because even after Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex both declared the truth to the world, they shared her personal experiences, not just the suicidal ideations and the depression that ensued, the isolation she experienced, the way certain members of her family turned against her, the way certain members of Prince Harry's family turned against both of them, and the way the two of them have really had to cling to each other. But you have that on top of the racial abuse she's experienced from many members of the public, terrorist hate groups, and all kinds of insane people, but conscious enough to know when they're causing harm and they're choosing to cause harm to her. My heart goes out to her because even after explaining that experience, explaining the miscarriage and all of the pain she's endured, but also overcoming all of those things, people still have persisted. It hasn't gone away. And it's so, I need another word for interesting. It's actually it's heartbreaking. That's kind of what I can express. It's heartbreaking when people draw the comparisons and the memory of Princess Diana, and they draw the comparisons to Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, who wasn't necessarily dealing with the same type of hate that Princess Diana and Meghan were, but she was experiencing public and media abuse of her own. But when people draw on the memories of two people who have now since been deceased, and they talk about their experiences as if they're in the rearview mirror and it's completely in retrospect, but then they completely ignore the fact that Meghan is going through this actively, and they don't choose to advocate for Meghan. One, I know what you are, but then two, it's heartbreaking because imagine someone saying, I see exactly the flaw in the system and I see that you're in the system, but I don't care about you. I just care about who it's already claimed. I probably won't care about you until you're gone. That is heartbreaking. It's absolutely pathetic. So anyway, I'm glad that people are more open to speaking about this. And by drawing those comparisons, we have a very clear vision of where that ending could have ended up for Meghan. And it also highlights the power of Prince Harry's choice to pull her and their child out of that environment immediately, but also his choice to pull himself out of that environment, especially having the path lit by his own mother and remembering what happened to her, using that experience to make a different choice and saying, hey, I'm not going to leave my wife out to dry the way my trashy ass daddy left my mom. And he didn't say that, but I mean, it was implied. But no, it's beautiful that he took history, a very painful history, and he made it purposeful. And he saved lives in the process, the lives of the people he loved most. That couple in general are just a very courageous couple. I also want to just pull it back to Princess Diana. She had no one. And she did have her family. There's this, I try not to rile up people who hate the Spencers because a lot of those people lived through those times and read those headlines. Since the 90s, a lot has come out. A lot of narratives have been corrected, particularly with her brother Charles. And there's this narrative, and I'm not trying to argue with anyone, but I did read Princess Diana's book. I also have read a number of speeches, essays, and watched a number of interviews with Charles Spencer, her brother, someone she was very close to. He was the person she was closest to in the world outside of her children. And there's this narrative that he refused to let her live with him. And he was really flippant about her security and her safety. And quote, that's what got her killed. I have gotten that comment a number of times. And I just need you to know, if you say that, I'm going to block you. That is that woman's brother. I'm not saying he made the right decision by not letting her move there. But the context that's provided around that is likely from headlines read in real time back then. But it completely negates the fact that Charles has corrected that narrative. And so did Diana's, the 25th anniversary of Diana's book also negated that message. Now, that was obviously the 25th anniversary isn't in her own words. That's in Andrew Morton's words. But it's with respect to history to correct that narrative that came out. So basically, there's this assumption that he did it flippantly. That was not the case. It actually wrecked Charles that Diana could not live there. But there is a very real reason. So her brother Charles Spencer is the Earl Spencer. That means his estate is at Althorpe. That is not a private residence. It's his family's residence, but that belongs to the country. That is a public residence, meaning it has to allow visitors for a certain amount of time throughout the year. Now, when they have renovations, when things like that happen, yes, they can shut down, but that estate is open to the public. Now, not every inch of that estate is open to the public. There are some private quarters, but for the most part, Althorp is for the public, and it's his job as the Earl Spencer to maintain it. The reason that's important is because when he extended the invitation for Princess Diana to live there, it was so that he could keep her safe. But because it is a public estate, her security would not have been allowed to occupy to the level that she would need to keep her safe. His choice in letting her know that, and the two of them making the decision for her to not live at Althorp, was a decision made together, although it was heartbreaking for her because she loves Althorp, particularly the gardens. She was excited to live there. She even said so in her book. She wasn't allowed to, or it was even said in the 25th anniversary of her book, she wasn't allowed to live there. She really wanted to. But her security would not have been allowed to keep her safe. It wasn't until after the divorce and after she had moved out of Kensington, which she was still allowed to use their exercise quarters and her private office in Kensington, but she had to move out. It wasn't until after the divorce and the royal family had stripped her of her security. And there's this window between she's already found another place to live and she just lost her security from the royal family. There's this very small window. Princess Diana was only alive for 1 year after her divorce to Prince Charles. So in that window, sure, because she doesn't have security anyway, I probably would have said, hey, go ahead and hightail it over here and I'll do the best I can to keep you safe here as long as you're with family. But she'd already found another place to live. It is a very messy situation, but I just want to bring people back to the fact that Charles was not being malicious with that. He was probably one of the most, if not outside of her children, the person affected the most as her sibling that she passed away. And he has carried the torch of her memory ever since. If you follow him on Instagram and if you follow the official Althorp account on Instagram, they are consistently venerating Princess Diana's memory. And they do so valiantly. They don't wait till holidays and moments throughout the year and anniversaries. They venerate Princess Diana and every member of the Spencer family every week, at least every week. Most often, several times a week, you'll see something about Princess Diana. They are very much a loving family amongst themselves. And so whether you agree with his decision is not up for me to determine, because I also probably would have said, hey, if they're going to strip you security anyway, just come over here. I probably would have said the same thing. But the decision was made with her safety in mind. That's the irony of the situation, is she likely would have been safer, but who knows, because she didn't pass away at home. She wasn't harmed at home. She was harmed while traveling. That might have, one might assume she would have taken that trip, whether she was going back home to Althorp or back home to her own apartment, what have you. She was traveling and in Paris when she passed away. Whether her home base was Althorp would not have changed where she was that night. It might have. We have the butterfly effect to consider, but more than likely it wouldn't have. It'd be different if her security was breached at home. That conversation, I feel, would be very different. But the fact that her home base was Althorp or was not Althorp wouldn't have changed that her passing occurred in Paris in a tunnel by paparazzi. I think the weight of that should be, 1, on the paparazzi, 2, the people who refused to help her in that moment, and 3, the royal family. Let's move them up to the list. Number 1 should be the royal family for stripping her security for any reason. And that is always when my ire will be directed. But that's just me. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Again, I'm not telling anyone how to feel, but it is always really sad when I see that comment and I understand where it comes from. But as someone who heavily deep dived that whole thing, I've watched countless interviews and listened to podcasts and all kinds of things with Charles Spencer, the Earl Spencer, talking about that situation and reading Diana's book, both versions, the original and then the 25th anniversary with the added intel. It's always really heartbreaking. And I can imagine most, not all, most siblings would give their left arm and their right leg to ensure the safety of their sibling. And so I can only imagine the type of pain he feels as her brother, knowing I made that decision because I wanted you to be safer. I wanted you to have more security or substantial security, and I wouldn't be able to allow that much security on Althorp grounds. And then you end up passing away anyway. And had you had security, you likely would still be here. I can't imagine living in the margins of that understanding. And my heart goes out to him and the entire Spencer family. Diana should still be here. And the people who the people who were responsible for securing her and maintaining her safety failed her. The paparazzi failed her. Paris, hell, failed her. The world failed that woman. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I say this all the time, I've been meaning to reread that book and recap it. I feel like the first time I recapped it, I was reading it for the first time. So I was like, I was mostly focusing on the big moments, but there are all these little facts and stories and nuance that's offered in Diana, her true story, that I didn't really focus on because we were, recapping the whole book, that I would love to take my time and go maybe chapter by chapter versus part by part, because there's so many different little facts and stories within that book that I didn't highlight that I would love to circle back to and really discuss it. If that's something you would be interested in, especially for those on the member side, if you're interested in me doing that again and kind of focusing on these less publicized moments in the book and just kind of taking it more in a granular approach, let me know in the comments. So that's all I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share so that more people can find us. Thank y'all so much for all the support you've been sending me. I really appreciate it. I'm still getting caught up on comments. And as the channel grows, I got to figure out some kind of way to get better at that. But I've been trying to block out time every week to dig into comments. So please know that if I did not respond yet, I'm getting there, and I'm not trying to ignore you in any way. I really appreciate all the support. Y'all have been so sweet, and I love reading y'all's comments. I like that because it's the purpose of the channel for us to converse. So I'm trying to get around so we can actually be having these conversations. On Friday, we will be having a live stream to celebrate 4 years of the Sharion and Sade channel on YouTube. We've officially hit 4 years, and YouTube sent me this cute little picture to celebrate hitting 4 years, and I am so excited to celebrate. So we're gonna be having a live stream, y'all. I cannot wait, and I will see y'all there. That's all I have for y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.